Hello, my friend. Before we jump into today's episode, here's a quick tip. We recently released a brand new, completely free tool on our website. It is a done for you sales script. So if you or anyone on your team ever struggle with the S word, it's sales, go ahead and grab these scripts, make them your own, and start turning more strangers into members with this proven process. We know that sales is a skill and you can get better at it with practice. These sales scripts will help. So click the link below in the show notes and download them now. Today, we're tackling something every gym owner and small business owner faces, at least at some point in their life, which is burnout. So Mark and I are going to talk about what burnout really is, what it looks like, how it sneaks up on you, how you can predict it coming in some cases, and we're going to talk about some practical strategies for building some self-care, building a support network to help you break through that cycle and kind of reclaim your energy. So if you've ever experienced burnout, or you know you will at some point, and I promise you will, this is a great episode for you. So keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business of Unicorns podcast. I'm back here with Mr. Mark Fisher. Mr. Mark Fisher, how are you doing on this fine day?
I am doing pretty great.
Yeah, we're recording podcasts today, so we're in the zone. I'm going to jump into today's topic because I'm ready. And so we talk a lot about this podcast about a lot of great shit that we're doing in Business of Unicorns, a lot of great shit that our Unicorn Society members are doing. In fact, we bring our Unicorn Society members on this podcast on a regular basis, talk about all the great shit we're doing, and that is all so true. There's a lot of wins all the time, and we couldn't be more proud of them. And we also wanted to use just at least one podcast to say, not everyone's doing great all the time. We want to just be honest and say there's some people whose businesses are struggling. There's some people whose leads are down, who are struggling with finances, who have personal life things going on. They're getting in their way of running the business in the way that they want to be. And one of the more common challenges that we see with all of our Unicorn Society members and our community in general is that being a business owner, being a small business owner and a founder means you're going to run into some burnout from time to time. And we see that happen from our members on a regular basis. There's some group of our members, some percentage on a regular basis that are just burnt the fuck out. So we want to just have a quick podcast today where we acknowledge that, talk about like what actually is burnout and what are some tips that we've used to help ourselves, some of our members get through it. So Fisher, you want to kick us off and talk about like, how do you think about burnout in yourself, knowing like that moment is coming? How do you define it and think about it for yourself?
I mean, for me, so many thoughts about this. I mean, I'll say this.
No, maybe it won't be a quick one, but we'll try.
First of all, I'll disclose, like, I think in general, I have had an unusually small percentage of my professional life around burnout. And in some ways, actually, this maybe makes me a useful case study because this is not a perpetual thing for me. So there's some things I've learned like, oh, this is a piece. But, one of the things I'll say for me, and this is maybe obvious to fitness people, and maybe some people are different here, is my physical being is a big piece of this. Mm-hmm. And one thing that is like a real factor as I get older here, and again, different people are different. Maybe some of you drink all the time, but it's no secret. I like a martini, and we talk about and joke about it a lot. And it is real true for me at this age. I have to really monitor my alcohol intake. If it tips up above a certain point, particularly as you get older, and younger listeners, binge drink as much as you can. Well, now you can't because you won't forever. What happens is, if you look what happens in your brain physiologically, okay, your dopamine gets topped off to super physiological levels. And if you're drinking even moderate amounts, like regularly enough, what happens is you downregulate your own ability to make dopamine. Now, the good news is the brain can heal. So if you take, a few days to a few weeks, a few months off, you can really bring that back in. And I'm lucky. I am the most topped off dopamine person to ever live. Like, I don't think anybody's more dopamine than me naturally, which is also why I have such low tolerance. I'm like, I don't feel amazing today because I want to feel amazing, like I almost always do. So that is one thing that I would encourage people to do if you're dealing with burnout. And I know that could be frustrating if you're like, I don't have time to do. So yeah, there are obviously inputs of fitness that are important. Like, are you working out? Are you sleeping? But also look at, are there any unhelpful inputs that are coming in that shouldn't be there at all, or are too high side, right? Like over drinking is probably not. I mean, maybe it is actually. I don't. I have no idea. I don't know if it's appropriately discussed, but I think that is an issue for some, and even for some
Yeah.
people, probably caffeine. I tend to have like a higher tolerance there. It tends to be less of an issue.
Sure.
But if you're doing things that are coming into your body that are not helpful, if you're not eating well, right? And again, I know a lot of people like under stress want to go to like eating tons of like not healthy for you foods.
Yeah.
And I got to say, when I was younger, I would roll my eyes at this kind of conversation because when you're younger, frankly, it probably doesn't matter. So if you're younger, maybe who cares?
Yeah.
We have other goodies for you too. But I would say at this point in my life, I am. I don't think it's placebo anymore. I think really like if I'm not taking care of my body, it's not just that like I'm not as proud as myself. It is that there is a physiological impact that
Yeah.
just gives me less capacity. It makes me less excited about my life.
I was just going to say the exact same thing, right? Just diminishes your capacity to deal with the stressors.
Yep.
Right. And if you're just even a little bit dehydrated, a little bit tired, a little bit physically exhausted, right, that your ability to deal with stressors is worse. So just, it's just a scientific fact, right? That makes sense. And so I think that's a great way of thinking about it, Fisher, is like, is that this is something that's really strongly correlated with your just kind of physical well-being, right? Those emotional and physical well-being are so neatly tied together. They're almost indistinguishable when it comes to talking about burnout. Let me say this, I feel like I'm also somewhat lucky. I don't think I've had, compared to a lot of people that I talk to, as many real serious incidents of burnout. But let me maybe I'll put my nerd hat on for a second, since burnout is something that I have studied a decent amount at this point academically, and just say, that burnout really, when you look into like the literature about this, has really kind of three core components. It's not just about being tired. It's not just about my work is hard or feeling a little overwhelmed. I mean, those things are real challenges. I don't want to say that it's that those aren't real, but burnout really speaks to a kind of a cycle of things that starts with emotional exhaustion, right? And this can be like a sense of physical and emotional like fatigue. Right. You get depleted of energy. You're kind of overwhelmed by responsibilities. That's kind of the first piece of this cycle. The second thing is, well, in some research, they talk about it as like depersonalization, where you start to like then shift your attitude about your work, where you start to detach yourself from work. And this is where people start to feel burnout. Questions start to arise like, do I even want to do this anymore? What even is my job?
Not uncommon gym owner question, by the way.
No, right? Right. And it's accompanied by this like detached, somewhat maybe even like cynical feelings about your work, right? And you start to like push your work farther away because it's been this point of stress and anxiety and fatigue. And then from there, the obvious next thing that happens is that your efficiency and proficiency dips. You get worse at your job because of this, right? And that's what kind of helps the cycle perpetuate over time, right? Is that fatigue leads to this kind of depersonalization. You push your work away. Because you push your work away, you're kind of worse at your work and you start to get less results. Things get even harder. You drop balls. People are a little mad at you. There's a little tension in some of your relationships. You're disappointed in yourself. There's a little shame there, right? And that makes more emotional exhaustion, right? So it becomes this kind of flywheel negative spiral effect. And that's not to say you have to have all three of those things to say you have burnout. You can call it whatever you want, but that's what the research shows makes it particularly, sticky and pervasive. And so one of the things I would say, I agree with you for sure, that one of the things that people got to do when it comes to any sort of negative emotional spiral is say, okay, how do I take care of my physical body? Sleeping, eating, drinking all makes a big difference. I think the other piece that, that I'll add to this is the thing people can do is to really make sure that they have people they can talk to about this, right? Like your social support network here really matters. And the reason it can last for a long time with leaders is it's often a cliche, but true. It's lonely at the top, right? As a leader of your own small business, you often don't have someone to turn to. If you have a group like Unicorn Society, you can turn to your peers and your coaches. If you have a mentor, those are great people to turn to. In some cases, the person you work with is your spouse. You can't turn to them, right? Your friends don't get what it's like to run and own a gym. You can't turn to them. So I think making sure that you have a support network of someone to talk out your feelings with, whether that's a paid professional or a just trusted colleague or friend, I think that's the first tip I would give, because it's hard to get out of break that cycle on your own. And I know from talking to, at this point, I'm sure dozens, if not hundreds of people going through this kind of burnout, it really is helpful to be in conversation about it. And I think, if you have to pay for that extra help and support with a counselor, therapist, coach, it's so fucking worth it.
Oh boy. Yeah. That really lands and is very resonant. And yeah, I feel like my, I think part of one of the things I think I probably have done naturally and maybe like helplessly because of like big feelings, have no choice, have to get them out somehow, is I do feel very lucky. I feel like I have usually been pretty well enveloped in a number of the relationships that are
Mm-hmm.
super, super supportive, not the least of which is my wife, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who, yeah, it's funny. My wife is not always like super curious, all the details of what I'm doing. And actually, I kind of like that. It's like she's not like up in my grill about my business. But one thing that is very helpful about that relationship to me is I'm getting emotional. It reminds me of my mother. My mother was the same way.
Oh yeah.
If I'm really upset, I can just like go to her and be like, I'm really upset about this thing. And she's
Yeah.
like, okay. And just like listen
Yeah.
and like reassure, which is funny
Yeah.
because with like my daughter, it's like, I don't know if this is like actually working, but like, I kind of think so. Like one of these like gentle parenting moves, I promise this relates a little bit.
Yeah. Please.
And maybe this doesn't map perfectly if you're trying to help somebody that's coming to you if they're in burnout. But like a lot of the games, like when my daughter's upset about something, is just being like, that's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry. That's so hard. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
it's so hard. You want to keep playing, right? You want to stay out here. And just like, it's like literally coaching, like you reflect back what they're saying. And then you like,
Mm-hmm.
I care about you. That's so hard. And there's something, it's so funny, that dynamic, how effective it is with like a 3-year-old. And also acknowledging that's arguably what a lot of times what I'm looking for in some of those things. Like sometimes I want tactics, and what can be amazing about like working with a coach, whether it's with us or somebody else, is that person can not only serve, I think, as a certain emotional palliative, but can also give you like help, right? Because sometimes it's like you're like sometimes like I just need to be heard, and somebody be
Yes.
like, I'm so sorry, that
Yeah.
sucks. And then sometimes you're like, also, what the F do I
Now
do?
do I do
And
next? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And sometimes you're also like, I'm not feeling big emotions. I just need to like talk through this. Like I literally had a call with like a dear friend of ours actually before about something we're working on the business. I was like, I don't know what to do, but I'm not like anxious about it. I'm just like, what do you think I should do? Let's talk about this. So anyway, I'll pull up, but it's funny to think of my own experience and how much I've benefited from both formal and informal people to give me nourishment when I am parched emotionally.
Yeah, 100%. So I think we've already covered some things that we think people can do about this, right? You talked about like self-care. I think it's just, I'll add to that level of self-care, just like, really developing your skills, your coping skills, your emotional management skills.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you're stressed and anxious? What are things that work for you? Is it about a walk in nature? Is it about calling a friend? Is it about taking a nap? Is it about, to learn about yourself? What are the things that help you kind of re-regulate your nervous system and get to a place where you can think more clearly, act more clearly? I think that's useful in terms of self-care to know those things about yourselves. We talked about the importance of social support. I think that's kind of critical, whether that's on your team or external or in your personal life. I think having some social support. I think another thing that comes up repeatedly in literature, I know we're both a big fan of, we've talked about Dr. Richard Boyatzis on this podcast
Mm-hmm.
many times. He talks about chronic stress for leaders. And there's a lot of other research that points to the fact that, especially for business founders, one of the things that's really helpful when it comes to this burnout is to go find some things outside of work
Yeah.
to give your time
Yeah.
and attention to. Go volunteer somewhere, get a fucking hobby, right? Go start to do some woodworking or arts and crafts or, play pickleball, right? But to have not your whole identity be wrapped up in this business can be really helpful, right? To give yourself some relief, like, oh, I have skills and value outside of this one thing helps you not put so much pressure on yourself to perform at 110% in that business at all times. And so I think, reaching outside of yourself, whether that's a sense of hope, going volunteer someplace, a sense of play, something like going to go play a sport, taking acting class, dance class, pottery class, all of those things that take you outside of just the seriousness and attachment to the work, help lighten the load and help you,
Yes.
feel like and be a more kind of well-rounded human being. Yeah.
Yeah. That reminds me a lot of, when I've mentioned before on the podcast, when I was in strategic coach for several years, they're big on like a free day where you do like nothing related
Yes.
to
Yes.
your job and tracking it. And, again, this is also where you have to contextualize this information. Like I understand some of you are like, I don't have help. I can't take time off. I
Of
have
course.
to, and we're also saying on the other hand, you have to call the lead within 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
so the season of what you're doing is going to depend on probably the season of what's happening with the business. But that's also why, like, I'm a fan of like, crude, like how long should you grind And I'm always like, ideally no more than 3 to 6 months, really
Yeah.
ideally no more than a year. If we're 2 years and you're still working 7 days a week, like something is wrong, right? Doesn't mean you're a bad person, but something is
Something is
wrong. And
wrong.
you need to
Yeah.
get like probably ask for help, probably gonna pay somebody for help, because that's not going to be sustainable. And then you're going to get in the cycle, right? Where it's like, now it's worse because you're getting less confident and you're more burnt out and you're turning
Possibly
off your
more
clients.
in
You have a
debt.
bad attitude. You're getting
Yes.
in debt. Your
Yeah.
family's getting, your relationships are getting really tattered. So, there is a time and a place to grind. So I understand what we're saying there, but ideally, when the business reaches some stability and maturity, uh, ideally we need, I'm going to say, I think we need to get to the place where you can turn it off for at least an entire day and maybe 2 days. It's not to say you can't do literally anything. Strategic coach would. And I think, my own experience is it is a meaningful difference if I actually challenge myself to actually not look at my emails, which historically I haven't been great at. But I also know that if I give myself, even if I work a little bit on a Saturday morning, which often like I like to, because I like my job, if I stop work and like I'll let myself listen to a business podcast for my mid-morning workout on Saturday, but if from there on until like Monday morning I force myself to not do anything for work,
Right.
I'm just coming in with so much more gas and so
Yeah.
much more resourced. I'm a little groggy. It's true. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, what's my job again? I
Yep.
even noticed for me at this, the tender age, my sleep really gets impacted. And that's something
Yeah.
I heard Dan Sullivan say once. I was like, God, it's like so true. Like if I'm like in it, it's like I can't totally turn off sometimes during the week. I don't sleep as well. But like by the weekend, I think this happened like kind of this week too. Like my sleep started getting like kind of crappy. And then last night, I think because I took the whole day off and I literally just sat on the couch with Cece and played with my daughter and watched Disney movies and the Billy Joel documentary on HBO Max. And then last night I slept like almost 9 hours. I mean, I just like clocked on the Oura ring. So legit 9 hours. So at any rate, yes, I think taking time away is crucial, crucial, crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that, those are some good tips to start with. I know this is a complicated topic and there's a lot of layers to this, but I think if you're going to be, bold enough in your life to build something like a business, right? You're going to you're going to hit some walls from time to time, right? And there's a lot of other tactics we didn't have time to cover here, but I think just knowing that you're going to hit these walls, knowing that part of the solution when you do is about your own personal self-care. Part of the solution is about having a social support network. Part of the solution is about just having a broader identity that doesn't tie yourself to work all the time, 100% of the time, tie your value to work 100% of the time. These are all just, some things to consider when you find yourself in that place. And obviously we're a big fan of asking for some help. And if it needs to be hired professional help, like coaches, it's a small pitch for Unicorn Society, but really anything at all. Other business mentorship groups, small business groups, anything at all helps you have a support system, which is just so critical. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if I can add one final thing here,
Please.
I have to jump off. Is it strikes me that part of the issue too is, it's an old Earl Nightingale quote, which I just think is money, which is happiness is the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think idea or ideal, one of the two. And one thing that I think we should also observe is you can feel so exhausted and completely overwhelmed and you're working crazy hours. But if you feel like you're getting traction and things are going in the right direction, particularly as an entrepreneur, that could represent some of the most fun times of your life. Like it's 100%. Very, very hard, but also very fun. Where it starts to, like, I think inevitably lead to burnout is if you're doing the same thing and you're seeing no progress, you have nothing to point to say that you're at least growing and developing some way, but optimally seeing some quantifiable numbers go the right way. That's when this gets like interminable, right? And again, if you're doing this for 2 years and you're not seeing things change and you're still not seeing the results you want, if I were to bang on my table kind of person, I'd say like, talk to somebody. It doesn't have to be us. I'd love the opportunity to do it. Go.businessunicorns.com/brainstorm. But whether it's with us or somebody else, I beg of you, do not tolerate a life of burnout. It's unsustainable. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to your family. And there are resources out there. You do not have to just suffer with never seeing traction.
I think it's a great distinction, Fisher, right? There's some people who are exhausted and fatigued, but also fired up, right? And that they're in the heat of it and they're stoked about it, right? And it's, it sucks from time to time, but they're still moving toward that goal. Mm-hmm. And I think the distinction is if you're working so hard and pushing so hard and you're exhausted so much, you start to push work away, you want to start to distance yourself, and then that's a sign that you're falling into a different kind of cycle
Yes.
that's less helpful. So
Yep.
I'm so glad you made that distinction. I think it's a really good one, because some people are just starting, and there's a lot of hustle that's required to start a business, and it's exhausting. It doesn't mean you're burned out in some cases. Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for a great conversation as always, Mr. Fisher, and friends. I hope you enjoyed this. And come back to the next one, because we're going to do another one again soon.
We
Have a
sure
great day,
will.
Fisher. Have a great
Bye.
day, everyone. See you on the next one. Bye.